the appointment she booked under my rival's name. I draw decisions people will have to keep wearing. That's the straightforward way to say I'm a tattoo artist. I build sentences in skin, marks that outlast jobs and lovers and the generous version of yourself you swear you'll come back to in spring. I like the ritual, the antiseptic sting, the snap of gloves, the quiet when the machine starts and a body agrees to hold still because it wants to remember properly this time. You can fake almost anything in a mirror except a line that healed honest. Nova walked into my shop because she didn't want to be careful anymore. "I'm done collecting intentions," she said, tossing her hair like a challenge at the stencil rack. She works 2 floors up in the same building, a boutique that sells dresses that behave better than the men who buy them for the wrong reasons. A week later, she came back alone with a bottle of ginger soda and the precise courage of someone who has rehearsed not flinching. I put the first mark on her, a small meteor stitched along the ridge where hip becomes waist, orbit lines just shy of cocky. She looked down, breathed out, and I fell a little in love with the moment right after someone makes a promise to themselves in ink. We said the quiet part louder a month later and started borrowing each other's mornings. She'd show up after closing with her hair pinned in a way that wants to be invited to fail. I'd sit her on the counter and draw with a Sharpie while the sign still said open, but everyone who mattered knew to keep walking. If love is real for me anywhere, it's across a stretch of skin I'm mapping, the language of muscle telling me where a line will look like it grew there. The morning everything leaned, I found a name in my scheduling app I couldn't swallow. I was doing the thing you do when the day hasn't started, wiping down stations, setting needles on their trays like silverware, pretending the playlist is fate, when a notification popped with a time and a lie. Nova Vale consultation, 3:30 p.m. with Cade. Cade owns a shop across the street that pretends grime is authenticity. He learned machines the way some men learn boundary violations, by watching and calling it mentorship. He uses a tone with clients that reads as worship until you notice the small hand on your hip. He's talented, which is its own menace. People let talented men score points they didn't earn. He and I have a truce that will go bad if either of us breathes wrong. I stared at the screen long enough for ghosts to consider rent. Nova never books in public. She texts me photos of the place she wants a thing to live and lets me send back the yes that makes it plausible. A consultation is a choice. With Cade, it's a dare. She walked in at noon in a dress that wanted the afternoon to misunderstand it. She set a coffee on my counter the way you place a coin on a rail, not because a train is coming, but because the sky is about to choose. I wanted to be easy. I picked up a stencil like it weighed more than speaking. "You seeing Cade at 3:30, I said, mild enough to pretend manners. Nova's mouth did the small thing it does when she's deciding whether to be brave or merciful. "It's research," she said. "He does fine line script better than your pride lets you admit. I wanted to hear how he talks to women who pay cash." "He talks like a man who thinks holding a wrist is a compliment," I said. "He draws letters that look like they think they're too good for sentences." "I like my LS a little arrogant," she said, then softened. "It's a small phrase, not a betrayal." "What phrase?" I asked, because romantic men are detectives without a badge. She flashed the message on her phone long enough for letters to become weather. No witnesses. She wanted it on her ribcage, small, an inside joke with the mirror. She said she'd write it in a way no one else would read aloud. I looked at my hands and thought about how many promises I asked them to keep that mouths can't afford. "Let me do it," I said. "You don't need a rival to edit your life." "I want to hear a stranger behave like he doesn't get to keep me," she said. "Then I want to come home." I've tattooed enough liars to know this wasn't one. It was worse, a truth that didn't include me. Be back by 4, I said, choosing jurisdiction over dignity. We'll stencil at 4:05. You can tell me how not to talk. She ran a finger down my forearm with that dry, sparking affection that gets me through slow hours. Stop being noble, she said. It's loud. She left. I cleaned a machine that wasn't dirty. I rearranged flash I'll never trace. I told a walk-in we were booked until a month from never and felt my own voice file a complaint. At 3:32, the light in Cade's window went soft in that way he thinks makes him look dangerous. He sat Nova down in the front chair, all stage and mercy, because men like him sell privacy in broad daylight. I watched the back of her neck go alert, the way skin does when it's being asked to flirt with heat. I lasted 11 minutes. At 3:43, I crossed the street like a person who hopes the asphalt could be an explanation. The bell in his door tried to be cute. I made it a funeral. Cade looked up with a smile he keeps in a glass in the back for surprise guests. "Brother," he said, "come to consult." "Came to see if you were going to spell witness wrong," I said. Nova's head turned toward me the way a compass needle dies to. She didn't look grateful. She looked live. Cade flicked his eyes at her ribs like a man who knows the exact temperature of performance. "It's just a placement chat," he said. "She wants a line where breath will learn to behave." "She has a guy," I said. "Her guy knows her breath already." "Her guy busy being proprietary," he said, still smiling. "Proprietary gets you toward loss, man. You of all people know that." Nova set her palm flat on her dress, covering the spot where an idea was scheduled to become proof. "I asked him," she said calmly. "He said yes. He's here. He's saying no. The version of him I like best is pleading and posturing at the same time." "It looks good on him," Cade said. He leaned closer, theatrical in a register that makes my molars itch. "Say no louder. You might convince air." The shop smelled like green soap and lemon cleaner and men who choose cologne that apologizes without meaning it. I wanted to be better than the worst room I've ever worked in. I failed. "Come with me," I said to Nova, no adjectives. Her throat moved in that swallow I draw for a living. She nodded. Cade's smile didn't fall, which is how you know it wasn't real. "Another time," he said, and the way he made time sound like talent gave me the small, stupid pleasure of imagining a future where I teach his ego to respect humidity. Back in my station, I scrubbed my own table like salvation lives in friction. Nova tied her hair up without being asked, which is one of the million reasons the first thing I ever drew on her looks like it belongs there. I printed the phrase in 2 fonts, one that was serious, one that was petty, and held them against her. "Breath here," I said, touching the soft between bone and sternum. "Or you wanted to read when you lean to the left and ruin bars." "Ruin bars," she said. "Or read in a mirror while I wash my face and practice being decent." I stenciled. She looked in the mirror and became a person I want to marry when I'm being unrealistic, and a person I want to keep, which is harder. "Good," she said. "Good," I echoed. The machine hit the note I trust more than men. Appeal so soft only nerves hear it. I stretched her skin the way you do when a letter wants to learn English and your hand is the school. The first line went in. She hissed and smiled at the same time, my favorite chord. While I worked, she did the thing that kills me. She talked the way people do when they trust you with a needle and a secret. "He leaned too close," she said. "He used words like breathe and low and you're the boss. He asked if I wanted to try placement lower. I said I know a man who already has the map." "Lower is for cowards," I said, "and minor gods." She laughed. I made the T in witness taller to honor her laugh. By the time I wiped the last ghost of purple off her, The phrase looked less like a dare and more like an oath. It tilted when she breathed, like a thing that knows it belongs to a life you can live without having to brag. She stood, arched, checked the way it read when she would be in a mirror in soft light. "No witnesses," she read aloud. Then she turned and pressed her mouth to mine without any witnesses but a mirror and an idiot with a machine. We stopped before the room asked to write a check we couldn't cash while my colleagues were still on the clock. She put her shirt back on. I taped a wrap in place the way you wrap anything you love that just learned the world has air. "Aftercare," I said. "Soap. No gym. No Cade." "Cade's my cardio," she said, and then nodded at my face. "Too soon." "Too heretical," I said, "but laugh now so you don't feel the itch later." She did, and it learned the letters something I couldn't. I expected that to be the end of the day. Of course it was. At 8:10, after close, after the last walk-in had recounted an epic victorious heartbreak at the register like I was a priest with Apple Pay, my door jingled because grief never checks hours. Cade walked in with a bottle of decent whiskey and the insult of offering it in a paper bag. "Peace," he said. "I like your line weight there." He jerked his chin toward the room Nova had made holy. She wanted lower. She wanted to see if she could stand in front of a man and say no without asking him to clap, I said. He took 2 empty cups from near my sink, poured without asking, lifted his in a toast my day couldn't afford. "To witnesses," he said. I set my cup down full. "You ever wonder why you need an audience to call your hands good?" I asked. "You ever wonder why you need permission to call yours necessary?" he said, and left before I could decide whether to go 3 rounds or 7. At home, Nova undressed like an apology half-believed and asked me to help her with Bepanthen like she loves asking for any small mercy in a room only we run. I smoothed the thin sheen over the letters I would have drawn on her if we were both made of stupid. She hissed, and then softened into the sort of sound I have needed since 19 and didn't know how to spell until now. We went to bed like a ceasefire that likes to start up again when it's bored. I don't put the erotic in writing because I want to keep something unphotographed in a century where proof is kink. I will say this. She rose over me in a curve that included our day and our mistakes, and she said my name like a syllable you could live in for years. And when she stopped it was because she wanted to, not because I forgot to breathe. We wrote rules because all good ink is a rule you sign in blood you don't have to see to believe. No consultations with men whose chairs face windows. No script under ribs unless we can say it out loud without getting bored. If a phrase reads like a secret, we ask each other who wants to tell and who wants to keep it. And then we act like adults until one of us laughs too hard to remember why we were serious. Cade tried again, of course. People whose sense of audience outpaces their sense of self don't sit in the wings long. He posted a story with a stencil suspiciously close to Nova's. Same angle, different skin. He tagged no one, which is to say he tagged everyone. He came by the shop with a book of letter forms and a proposal to collaborate. I said no like a person who knows the cost of working beside someone who likes the sound of his own gloves snapping. Nova went about her life being better than both of us. She walked up 2 flights of stairs to a boutique that lies to women kindly about their futures and learned how to tell dresses the truth without humiliating them. She sent me photos of mirrors that make people brave. She came downstairs for lunch and leaned against my counter while I wiped machines and talked to sailors who get flowers on their necks because they miss water when they can't admit they miss anything else. One night a woman came in with a mark on her neck that read like a bruise and asked me for a raven to hide it, which is a sentence that shouldn't be legal. Nova sat in the corner and watched me draw a bird from a shape that had forgotten when it started. After, The woman hugged me and cried in a way that made me both proud and ashamed of the parts of me that still like applause. When she left, Nova pressed her forehead into my shoulder and stayed a long time. "That's why I wanted the words," she said into the cotton of my shirt. "Not to keep people out, to keep wrong stories from writing my face for me. We still fight. I spiral, which is a talent until it is. She likes a room to love her before she decides if she loves it back, which is a policy until it's a bruise. Sometimes she looks out my window at Cade's sign and says, 'You two are the same animal, you know.' I say, 'I'm domestic,' and she says, 'No, you're housebroken,' and we laugh because the difference keeps us from breaking. A month after the day with the screen, she brought me a sentence I wanted to refuse out of principle. 'I want another,' she said, pulling her shirt up without ceremony. The wrap had long since gone. The letters healed into the pale of her, clean, a little arrogant behaving. Same font, 2 words. "What?" I said, because I like to torture myself in 2-syllable spoonfuls. "Stay curious," she said. "Smaller, here." She pressed a finger to the inside of her forearm where a pulse talks louder than we do. "I hate it," I said. "You will love it in a year," she said. "Or you won't, I will." I stenciled. I made my machine sing. I put the mark in. She breathed in and then out and smiled because she knows the shape of a new room even with her eyes closed. We walked past Cade's window after close without looking in. He posted a reel that night about commitment, and I muted it because the world is full of men who think commitment is a curse that sounds like a flex. At home, Nova took off her dress like she was returning it to a son that would prefer we didn't own any. She got into bed without waiting for the day to approve. She turned on her side and tucked her knees against me the way people do when they trust a person with their winters. I kissed the place between the phrases I've made and felt, for the first time in a year that should have ruined me, like my hands had built something I didn't need to watch to believe. People think tattoos are about pain tolerance. Mostly they're about appetite and aftermath. You say yes to a thing you can't return, and then you find out who you are when it itches and you can't scratch. The appointment she booked under my rival's name is still in my app history because I won't delete a day that taught me not to audition for roles I didn't want. The line I put on her that afternoon looks different in every mirror in our apartment, and that is the truth I serve now. Same words, different light, still ours, no witnesses, just knowing, which sometimes is the only gallery you need.